On behalf of the League of Women Voters of the Plymouth area, I welcome you to the Candidates Night for Plymouth's townwide offices, which include the school committee, the select board, and the planning board. The other townwide race for charter commissioners will be covered another evening. I am attorney Alice Legue, and I shall be moderating this program. I am a member of this league, but I do not live in Plymouth, and that is why I have agreed to moderate. This program is being recorded virtually by the League of Women Voters with the valuable assistance of Brian Byrne from EdTV Plymouth. It will be available to view very soon on PAC TV, so consult PAC TV for dates and times. It will also be available on demand on our website at www.plymouth.lwv.org and on our YouTube channel, which you can access from our website. This Candidates Night will consist of 3 parts. Each part will last approximately 30 minutes. We will start with the school committee, then the select board, and finally the planning board. The questions for the candidates were submitted by our members. The Voter Services Committee then screened them and selected questions that reflected a variety of issues that are important to Plymouth. The order of the questions and the closing statements was determined by random selection prior to tonight. This enabled me to fill out a speaking grid that will facilitate the flow of questions and answers. All responses, including the closing statement, will be limited to 1 minute. We have just a few rules. Candidates may not interrupt each other, no personal attacks are allowed, and no rebuttals are allowed during your answer, but you may rebut during your closing remarks. And so we will begin now with the school committee. There are 4 candidates who are running for 3 three-year positions on the school committee. A candidate for the 1-year position did not have any competition and thus is not at this event. So let's meet the candidates. Ms. Vedna Haywood, Ms. Margie Burgess, Ms. Kimberly Hunt, and Ms. Catherine Jackson. And we will now begin with question 1 with Ms. Haywood. What are your reasons for seeking election or re-election to the Plymouth School Committee?
Well, my reasons for seeking re-election to the Plymouth School Committee is that I would like to continue the work that I had the opportunity and the honor to do these past 3 years. I am a resident of the Plymouth area. I have been for the past 12 years. I also have a young son that is in the Plymouth school system, and I have thoroughly really have had been bestowed this opportunity in these past 3 years to work with community members, to work with the district, to work with teachers, to work with parents, to help find solutions regarding how we can best serve our children.
Thank you. Ms. Burgess? You need to unmute yourself, Marjorie.
Sorry. I am seeking re-election to the school committee because, well, there's a lot of work to do. And I think that my historic memory and I'm forward thinking, and I also would like to be a part of this change that we're going through now and moving it forward and making it better for everyone. But we have a lot to work out to get there. So I thank you for your vote.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Hunt?
Sorry. You know, I've been advocating for families, students, and public education for over 20 years. It was a natural progression for me when I decided to run for school committee originally. I have enjoyed every minute of it. This year's been challenging for sure, and it's been difficult, but I have a passion for all of our students. I many students I like to say are my own students, and I feel like I treat every one of ours as though they were my own. And, being such a difficult year and having so many challenges and so many unknowns, you know, like everyone else said, I want to see this through and I want to see us get through this the other side. And I think I have a lot to contribute. I'm still very active. I'm the legislative chair for the Massachusetts Association of School Committees. I still work with a lot of the policymakers.
Thank you. Ms. Jackson.
Thank you. I grew up in Plymouth. I love the community and the people in it. I really want to be involved because over the last many years, I've been involved in small, quiet ways of volunteering behind the scenes at the PTA, volunteering at Nathaniel Morton to do different things, donating to the food pantry, helping people book vaccine appointments. But I feel like the time has come to step forward and really sort of put my tenacity, my determination, and my hard work towards something that I really believe in. I have a daughter in the schools, and I really want to help make this experience for her and all our other kids a great one.
Thank you. Question number 2. What are 2 significant strengths and 2 major weaknesses that you see in the Plymouth school system? And we'll begin with you, Ms. Burgess.
Aha. All right. Well, right now the school department has changed the whole hierarchy. So it's working well. That's not the issue, but it certainly does take make a big change in what we do, and how we do things and move. But and COVID hasn't helped it. But everyone is moving forward well. I think everybody's working together. We're all working for one particular reason, where we all work for the best interest of the students that we serve. So weakness, right now, well, our weakness will be the social emotional issue, which we haven't really gotten a handle on going forward. So that would be it for me.
Thank you. Ms. Hunt?
I think as far as strengths go, I think our biggest strength is our staff and our teachers.
Yeah.
I think that if anything else this year, we've learned how flexible the teachers can be, how creative, how they can think outside of the box to do everything that they possibly can to make our kids succeed. So I think that's probably the biggest strength. The other strength, we are working really hard, and this year has forced us to in our technology. We now are a 1-to-1 district. And I think that we have the teamwork behind us to make it work and to use our technology to its greatest. As far as weaknesses go, I know that we're working really hard on diversity. I don't think our staff necessarily reflects our diverse population, and I would love to see some more work on that as especially the diversity committee. And I didn't get to say my one.
Thank you. Ms. Jackson?
Thank you. As far as the strengths, I would agree first with Kim that I really think that the teachers and the staff have done a phenomenal job this year, and they've really shown how much they care about the community and how much hard work and determination they've put into it. Another strength that I really see in this community is our alternative forms of education, the tech program, the Harbor Academy, and the ways that we've tried to address all students. As far as weaknesses, it sort of pairs into that. I do think that when it comes to diversity and equity, we have a long way to go. And I do see that we've started that work, and I'm thrilled about that. And then the other thing would be the social emotional, like Margie said. I think there's a lot to be done there, especially after this year.
Thank you. Ms. Haywood?
So the two strengths I think that the district has is one, I echo what everyone has mentioned in terms of our staff and our teachers. They've truly shown their ability to like pivot and to overcome the obstacles, especially that this past year has shown us. I also think our community partnerships are a huge strength. Our community partnerships, and I'm going to throw in a third one, and the variety of our programs. But in terms of weaknesses, I think, it was brought up, we do have a new administration, and I think sometimes that's hard given the year that we have had. So I think that is somewhat of a weakness until we can get ourselves up to speed. And family engagement, just having the ability to continue to reach out with our families and having their input. So that's the weaknesses.
Thank you. Question number 3. Because of the pandemic, the safety of the school infrastructures was questioned. Which school's infrastructure issues need to be addressed in the next 2 to 3 years? And we'll begin with you, Ms. Hunt.
That's a good question. We have three schools in our district that are over 100 years old. And I know that, especially with the pandemic, when we were trying to see how the schools were as far as ventilation goes, every single school is different. Our high schools are brand sparkly new, and they were built after we had all these safety concerns, and that's good. And then we've got the group, the West, Federal Furnace, all the ones that were built around the same time. And then we've got the 100-year-old school. So I think as far as issues goes, basically identifying which schools have the biggest issues. And I think that we're slowly repairing them. And this pandemic has actually forced us to really dig in and see where all of the gaps are or where the safety issues are.
Thank you. Ms. Jackson?
Thank you. I would agree with Kim, especially having a daughter at Nathaniel Morton. You can definitely see where the air filtration system and things like that are definitely radically different than what you see at the high school, and sort of bringing together a cohesive plan of action to try and get those things up and running. I think the school did a fabulous job thinking on their feet, trying to accommodate for those things. But I think this has taught us that trying to address a problem after the fact is definitely like a fire drill. And so having those things in line going forward would not only serve to, help the community for that,
Thank you. Ms. Haywood?
Yeah, yes, the pandemic has laid bare some of these infrastructural disparities, and that's across the board, that's across the state. And yes, we do have older schools, but I know that, that there were some attempts earlier prior to the pandemic to begin to start to fix some of like the structural issues, whether that be roofing, whether that be, certainly ventilation became a larger issue in terms of this pandemic. And so my understanding is that there is federal and state funding that we are looking at to fix some of the roofing issues. I think the school did a great job in terms of how, to combat the present issue of ventilation, but now certainly looking forward, our hope is that, possibly we can, fix this on a permanent basis rather than temporary.
Thank you. Question number 4. Teachers have faced many new and difficult challenges this year. And as a result, there is evidence that many teachers are leaving the profession. What measures can be taken to make sure our teachers are supported? And we'll begin with you, Ms. Jackson.
Thank you. So I think great schools happen because of great teachers. And so the number one priority, I think, should be to support our staff and make sure that they stick around, because we actually, are very tied to that being a major part of our community. I think definitely when it comes to how teachers feel supported during the pandemic, that's one thing that is important. Open lines of communication when it comes to what they need, support for them so they're not working 70 to 80 hours a week and having to neglect their own families. So maybe some additional resources to be able to make things cohesive, to have people be able to communicate across school lines, even to try and keep the resources together and have people have a good work-life quality balance.
Thank you. Ms. Haywood?
Can you repeat the question? Oh, I see it. Teachers have faced many new challenges, difficult challenges as a result. I think some of the measures that we can take is, taking into account their experiences within our school system, speaking with our teachers, listening to their concerns, creating better support systems, so that, when they are, feel like inundated. This has just been such an interesting year, and it's not only in this profession, it's in other professions as well, where you don't necessarily feel this support. So how can we, as a district, begin to be a little bit more intentional in how we serve our teachers? Maybe it's just having the intentionality and how we serve our teachers going forward.
Thank you. Ms. Burgess? You have to unmute.
Yes. Sorry. The teachers really do need support, and we need to pay attention to what their needs are and what they have to say. And I think it's done through the meetings that they have, but more can always be done. And we need our teachers. The reason why I think that some might be leaving were during the COVID, some people had issues with health issues and things like that. And so they've moved on. But overall, most of the teachers are here. And but we do need to listen to them and meet with them and understand their needs.
Thank you. Ms. Hunt?
Yeah, I always say that our teachers are rock stars, they're superheroes. And I've talked to a lot of teachers this year, and I always thought that I have talked to teachers over the years, but nothing like this year. And I think the main thing is they want to be heard. They want to feel like they have a voice. They want to be part of the decision making. They want to be validated. And like Ms. Burgess said, and I know that I push this too, is Dr. Kimball meets with them, I think every week now, and listens to them, tells them what's going on. But I really feel like there are so many teachers this year that have gone above and beyond, like you would not believe. They work on their own time. They log in with parents. They do things that are not expected of them. And I think that they just want to feel validated, contribute. I have heard teachers are thinking about leaving, but we need to appreciate them as much as we can.
Thank you. Our next question. The pandemic clarified significant academic, economic, and social emotional disparities among students and their families in all communities across the state. How are the Plymouth schools preparing to deal with this problem as students return to full-time learning? And we'll begin with you, Ms. Haywood.
I believe that the district is already beginning to attempt to deal with the problem. And I think by doing so is by identifying the gaps that were kind of laid bare by this pandemic. I think it's in terms of some of the, surveys that we've sent out to families and students, trying to identify, some of the issues that kind of rise above more others, and then trying to figure out like plans of action. This, what, it's only been a year, but unfortunately, I think that year has presented us with some issues that we will have to be dealing with far past, these next few years. So I think they are doing a good job in terms of attempting to tackle these
Thank you.
disparities.
Ms. Burgess? Unmute, please, Marjorie.
Every time. Anyway, the pandemic has really brought us a lot of challenges, but I think that the challenges that they've brought to us have been in many cases favorable, because we've gotten going with many issues that we might not have realized were there. So we would certainly be much more prepared next time. But we are preparing. We're having meetings with well, there's parents get surveys, actually students, the teachers. We're listening. We're trying to listen to and get to everything every Monday, almost every Monday. The superintendent has a call out for the teachers to, and they talk about things. So
Thank you,
that's
Ms. Burgess.
okay.
Thank you. Ms. Hunt?
Hold on. I see two big challenges that we have ahead of us, and I know that we are starting to address them. The first one, like you said, is learning loss. I know we used to call it summer slide when the students would learn, lose something, but we call it COVID slide now. There's many students that'll need extra help and guidance to fill those gaps that might have occurred over last year. I think expanding our summer school program, finding additional resources, and finding other ways to supplement their learning will be the key to helping them. And the other one is mental health. There was a study, I think 2,000 participants with mental health conditions were surveyed, and children with special needs, and 83% that said that this pandemic has made their conditions worse. So when you take children with special needs, students that are at risk and they're struggling, we just need to find help for them.
Thank you. Ms. Jackson?
Thank you. I can see already that the schools are definitely trying to address this. My daughter was in remote learning and is now in full-time school, and so I've been privy to seeing both sides of it. And I can see how the teachers are doing a phenomenal job trying to fill that gap already. I know they've done a lot of work with breaking down into small groups, working with special students. Her remote teacher in particular was really fantastic about being able to challenge the students who were accelerated a little bit while being able to work with the other students. So I really do think that the teachers definitely have a handle on what it means to try and close those gaps. And I know there were gaps before this. So that's definitely something that started with the strategic plan, but is going to have to be tackled going forward. And I think there are some great ideas out there of how to do that.
Thank you. Our next question. Do you feel our vocational technical studies programs are reaching out to all students in Plymouth, regardless of special learning needs and socioeconomics? What improvements, if any, would you propose? And we'll begin with you, Ms. Burgess. Unmute, please.
Our VoTech program in both of the high schools is a very good program, and we take in the 8th grade students to normally, but to experience what it is and whether they'd like to come and do this. The biggest problem we have is more students would like to be in the VOTEC program than we have room for. So we've expanded it to South High School, and we've expanded many of the programs, but it's still, but I don't think that they're picking on certain types of people. I think that all students would qualify when they go to apply. So no, I think our vote trick program is working really well.
Thank you. Ms. Hunt.
I'm a huge fan of our tech programs. Two of my own students have gone through the technology program, one at North and one at South. I can't say enough about it. I think every student should have some taste of technical studies, whether it's their career path or not. I think it gives them a sense of purpose. I tell everyone all the time, my oldest son used to say, you know, Mom, at least 2 periods a week, 2 periods a day, I enjoy school. And so these kids, if it's relevant, they're going to love it. They're going to be interested in it. I think that the biggest thing is space. I toured right before Christmas. I toured with Cindy Silva, the director, and we went through what they had done to adapt. And that's her biggest concern too. We need to get more kids into the program and not have a waiting list every year.
Thank you. Ms. Jackson.
Thank you. I too am a big fan of the tech program. I haven't had the opportunity, not being on the school committee yet, to be able to tour anything, but I have had them come out and do work at my house pre-pandemic. And I know some of the teachers that teach there, and I'm just blown away with the way they work with students and with how all the students, you know, carried themselves, how professional they were, how able to interact, and the skills that they were learning. So I think it's a fabulous program. I too would like to see it expanded to be able to include everybody. I'm not sure, not being involved in the school committee directly, that I can say where equity falls in that. I know equity is a problem, you know, across the board that we're addressing, and that is part of the strategic plan, and it's, you know, started to be addressed, and I think we have a way to go, but I think we're going in the right direction.
Thank you. Ms. Haywood.
So while I do think that our VOTEC programs are great and varied, I don't think it's equitable. I think it's a very rigorous program, which is wonderful, you know, in terms of our students, but the ability for all students to be part of that program, it doesn't exist. It was one of the things that when I was running the first time, I was actually kind of made aware of, and it would be great if we could possibly leave at least like 10% of that student pop that is placed in these programs, leave it open to other students that are not that, you know, traditionally based, students that they see coming into this program. These programs are honors, if not AP, students with impeccable, in terms of them not missing school. So I think we need to at least give some leeway to the non-traditional student. It is inequitable at this point.
Thank you. And because we're running short of time, we're going to go to your closing statements, for which you also have 1 minute, and we'll begin with you, Ms. Hunt. You have to unmute.
I know. Sorry about that. All right. Let me just, sorry. My time's ticking down. All right, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for allowing us this opportunity to present ourselves. I grew up in Plymouth and I attended Plymouth Public Schools, and all 3 of my children did. I work as a regional field consultant for an educational company, and I help students all over New England succeed academically. As the current chairwoman of the school committee, I've valued every opportunity to serve and work for our students, parents, teachers, and community. This year was challenging year is an understatement, and I take this responsibility very seriously and will make every effort to become informed to make all the decisions that will be in the best interest of all of our students. I'll continue to push for transparency and communication. And I firmly believe in getting accurate answers firsthand. And as your elected school committee member, my door is always open.
Thank you. Ms. Jackson.
Thank you to the League of Women Voters. Having grown up in Plymouth, I am happy to be raising my 9-year-old daughter here who is attending Plymouth Public Schools. I'm running for the school committee because I care about this town and the people in it. I want to support the public education that benefits us all. Starting my own photography business following a long career in finance has fostered my tenacity and required me to be organized, efficient, and goal-oriented. I would be honored to apply these skills in support of the Plymouth community and schools. Throughout the years, I valued my involvement in the Rotary Club, Big Brother, Big Sister at Nathaniel Morton, and the Plymouth Family Network PTA. I am also a member of the No Place for Hate Committee and the Land Use and Acquisition Committees. I look forward to approaching this role with an open mind, commitment to collaboration in order to support our students and teachers. I'm here to listen to you in a meaningful way. I would love to have the opportunity to serve the community that I love and believe in.
Thank you. Ms. Haywood.
Thank you. I'm running for the Plymouth School Committee because I believe in the importance of a quality public education for everyone. In my first term as your committee member, I had the honor of not only working with the committee to create better partnerships within the community and the district, but serving the constituents of Plymouth. I've learned that to be an effective school committee member, you not only contribute your own perspective, but you collaborate as a team with other members, the administration, the superintendent, and the town. With the children as an ultimate focus, I will continue to work together to accomplish the committee and the district's goals. As a school committee member, I will continue to work with the district to learn what additional resources are needed to support and further promote a successful learning environment in our classrooms. These past 3 years have been an unforgettable experience, with the past year being one of variance, unexpected loss, but also of hope and reimagining. And as a community, we have faced these
Thank you, Ms. Haywood.
obstacles. Okay.
Ms. Burgess. Unmute, please. Marjorie, unmute.
Okay. Well, I'm running for the school committee as a very passionate person who's been on for quite a while, actually. And but I grew up that way. My mother took in 354 foster children and ran roller skating at Memorial Hall, where I helped teach them, the kids. And later on, I worked for 30 years volunteering with the program for foreign student exchange. So I'm passionate about what I do. I have the historic memory of the committee. I am forward thinking, and I want to say thank you to all the staff that works so tough, hard for us.
Thank you, Ms. Burgess. Your minute is up. Okay. On behalf of the League of Women Voters, I want to thank the school committee candidates for participating in this forum. You are empowering voters with facts and information that will help them make important decisions as voters. Thank you for participating.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. On behalf of the Plymouth Area League of Women Voters, I welcome you to Candidates Night for Plymouth Select Board. There are 4 candidates who are running for 1 3-year position. I am attorney Alice Legue, and I shall be moderating this program. The questions for the candidates were submitted by our members. The Voter Services Committee then screened them and selected questions that reflected a variety of issues that are important to Plymouth. The order of the questions and the closing statements was determined by random selection prior to this evening. This enabled me to fill out a speaking grid that will facilitate the flow of questions and answers. All responses, including your closing statement, will be limited to 1 minute. We do have a few rules. Candidates may not interrupt each other. No personal attacks are allowed, and no rebuttals in your answers are allowed. However, if necessary, you may use your closing statement for a rebuttal. And so we are about to begin. So let's meet our candidates, Mr. Harry Helm, Mr. Kenneth Tavares, Mr. Michael Heath, and Mr. Everett Malaguti. And so we will begin with question number 1. What are your qualifications and reasons for wanting to serve on the Plymouth Select Board? And we will begin with you, Mr. Helm.
Thank you. My qualifications are, I'm currently the first vice chair of the Finance Committee. I've been a member of the Finance Committee for many years, and I've received a very good education on the budgetary aspects of town management and other aspects of town management. I'm also a member of the Manomet Village Steering Committee, where I am the vice chair, and I've also been on other committees over the years. My qualifications are my business background. I was the associate publisher and vice president for a division of one of the largest book publishers in the world before I moved permanently about 8 years ago up here to Plymouth. I purchased my house in 1996 and moved up here, as I said, a few years ago.
Thank you. Mr. Tavares. You need to unmute, Mr. Tavares.
After 14 months, you'd think I'd know that by now. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. I have a great deal of experience in local government. I started out a number of years ago as a member of the Advisory and Finance Committee. I've been a town meeting member. I've been elected to the Board of Selectmen for 9 terms. I love this community. I have found this to be a way to pay back to the town of Plymouth that has been extremely good to me. I was educated in Plymouth schools, left to go to school in Boston and then into the military. I feel very comfortable dealing with the local issues, and I think that it has shown that in the last
Thank you.
Oops, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Tavares. Mr. Heath.
Good evening. My qualifications, I would say up until 2 years ago would be nothing. I have no business doing this. I haven't done anything with government. But after working for the town for the past 3 years, I feel that something needed to be done. It's been a long 3 years of watching problems just get worse in the only 3 years I've been here. So not seeing many people do this, I figured to jump on board and try to help make things better. Try to bring common sense. I feel like taxpayers can relate to me. I'm a $50,000 a year earner. I struggle with my taxes as anybody else does. And I just feel like I could bring common sense and people can probably relate to me. I have construction background. I've been an auto mechanic. I've worked as a janitor in the schools. I've been around town a lot. And I hope to bring some common sense.
Thank you. Mr. Malaguti.
Well, the qualifications that I bring to the position are a lot. I've been a town meeting member for the last 10 and a half years now from Precinct 1. I've also been and currently am the vice chair of the Energy Committee, the chairman of the Natural Resources Committee, as well as a member of multiple other current and past committees in town. I've followed the government of Plymouth greatly as my tenure as a town meeting rep, attending more meetings than anyone would like to on all different boards and all different nights, sometimes putting those more before my own personal endeavors, but I feel that it's basically a gift that's been given to me to become a rep for the people and respond to all the people's needs in the town that gave me so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Question number 2. How is the town of Plymouth moving forward with diversity, equity, and inclusion in its hiring practices, specifically management positions? And we will begin with you, Mr. Tavares. You need to unmute.
I feel that we have made some progress in these areas in the town, but we have a long way to go. I'd like to see more diversity in the workforce. I know that this has been discussed in the hiring areas, and I certainly expect in the next couple of years to see the population change, and we will be able to achieve being up on these goals that we should be meeting now.
Thank you. Mr. Heath.
I think the town has done quite well with diversity in some areas. There are plenty of women who have gotten where they have been in higher roles. There needs to be more people of color hired, although our town is predominantly, based on white population. And I think just in time, I don't think anybody is there. I think we are an equal opportunity employer. And I think you'll continue to see more diversity as time goes on.
Thank you. Mr. Malaguti.
I think the town has done a great start at getting diversity in all different forms of the word, but I believe that the town can and will do a much better job in the future, and that there has been a lot of interest in getting more diversity within the town, whether it be through any municipal operation all the way down to its basic governmental form, that the town wants to have inclusionary practices that allow everyone to be involved and not be excluded from the measure. I believe that there's much harder work to do to get that standing to where we want it to be. I believe the town has taken the first steps to do that.
Thank you. And Mr. Helm.
Well, I'm going to agree with everybody that the town is taking steps forward, but I'm going to keep my answer really short and sweet. I think we have a long way to go.
Thank you. Question number 3. What are 2 significant strengths and 2 major concerns that you see in the town of Plymouth? And we'll begin with you, Mr. Heath.
Some of the strengths we have, being a large town, we have plenty of personnel available for emergencies. And another strength that we have is we do have a lot of public works to go around. Different people can fill in for different roles. And I think that is good versus some smaller towns that really don't have the personnel to get things done. 2 weaknesses is I feel that we do have incompetent and inefficient management. And I think another weakness is that trickles down and it makes all employees look bad.
Thank you. Mr. Malaguti.
Well, 2 of the strengths that the town has is going to be that the town has a very qualified workforce, that they have much more than I've seen in the past, and there is some improvement to be made, but the town is very strong in that aspect. Another strength that the town has is the actual people that make up the community, that are willing to do what it takes to make the town an even stronger place, to make it better for them and their family to reside here. 2 weaknesses that I believe the town has is One is an accountability problem, not just with the management of the town, but just in all general business. And another one is to do with how it portrays itself to the actual public itself.
Thank you. Mr. Helm?
Thank you. I think that Plymouth has a couple really, excuse me, amazing strengths. One is our location. We are centrally located, conveniently to Boston, conveniently to Cape Cod. We are on the ocean, and geographically, I think it's a beneficial positioning for the town. And that might become a little bit more clear in the remainder of my answer. Also, we have a diverse lifestyle here: ponds, trails, et cetera, et cetera. Weaknesses, as Mr. Malaguti mentioned, accountability is a serious weakness, along with transparency in our government and in our administration. Also, most importantly, our tax base includes only 10% commercial. That is untenable and unacceptable.
Thank you. Mr. Tavares? You need to unmute.
I think one of our biggest strengths is the workforce. We see this in the government side of the house, and also for private businesses. We have a very diverse population that is willing to work and is helping this community grow. The other big plus for us is our location. There's probably no one that comes to Plymouth that doesn't love where they are. Or we hear so many times, I'd love to move to this community. You have everything. When it comes to weaknesses, I think managing our growth has been a weakness, and it's difficult. The way we're trying to handle it right now with having open space and not encouraging commercial growth in some of the areas of our community.
Thank you. Question number 4. Do you agree with the planning board's decision to modify a covenant protecting open space? And how do you feel this will affect future development? And we will begin with you, Mr. Malaguti.
My answer is an easy no. I do not agree with the decision that the planning board made in breaking, in essence, the covenant that was established for this neighborhood and the residents that live there and bought into this. I believe it does have a dire consequence into the future if this is standing and they have purpose to do it into the future. I believe that there's much to be lost for the community, not just for open space, but also having a detrimental effect on the services and the taxes that residents are expected to help maintain and stabilize through this endeavor. I believe that the planning board decision is blatantly wrong, and it needs to have a better consequence to protect the taxpayers.
Thank you. Mr. Helm?
Thank you. It's a very complicated question. And I'm going to come at it from a little bit of a different angle than most might. I think one of the biggest problems right now, first of all, this decision is going to be appealed, and it is going to be the end result will be determined in the judicial system. But I think that nobody really knows all of the details about the covenant and about how it may affect future development, because frankly, I don't think the planning board has been very transparent. I think the meeting was an episode of complete non-transparency. I don't think that they paid particular attention to the voice of the community or the people who elected them. And I think that's one of the major problems with this.
Thank you. Mr. Tavares?
I did not agree with the decision, and I think there should have been the opportunity for a lot more public input. I invited the planning board to come into the Board of Selectmen's meeting a couple of weeks later to talk about covenants. I mean, if people go into this feeling that they are protected and then learn a number of years later that they're not, something's wrong. And I think this needs to be explained. I do think this could impact future development because people are going to say you made a promise and you didn't keep it. So I think we have a great deal of work to do explaining how covenants work and how they can benefit or actually defer development in the town of Plymouth.
Thank you. Mr. Heath?
I pretty much agree with what everybody else has said. I don't agree with changing a covenant. I think it's going to lead to more development. And quite honestly, living in Plymouth my whole life, I would not care if another building wasn't erected as long as I live here.
Thank you. Question number 5. What local initiatives around climate do you support or propose to protect our aquifer and our coastal assets? And we'll begin with you, Mr. Helm.
Thank you. The initiatives that I think are most important, and I'm gonna focus on the aquifer, because the aquifer, without proper protected drinking water, we have a lot of problems ahead. I think we need to be much more careful with development around the aquifers and around the wells. I understand that the planning board and zoning balance a lot of different things, but our focus needs to be protecting those. I am a proponent of open space, and I think that is a good way to protect our aquifer. The main thing would be, to me, really protecting the treescapes.
Thank you. Mr. Tavares?
The aquifer is our biggest problem right now. I think we need to have more safeguards built in. Recently, it was rumored that even other communities look at our water and think that this is something they might like to share. And we've got to have a lot more planning and putting into play protections that are going to keep the people and the Plymouth development safer. We've got work to do in this area.
Thank you. Mr. Malaguti?
So some of the initiatives that I support and have been a part of for the protecting of the aquifer and also the coastline includes being a fly on the wall during the water conservation committee, that they've been doing a large task at including conservation practices into the water management plan that helps Plymouth manage the aquifer assets that we have into the future. And open space is a great part of that, along with conservation. And that entails having the planning board help with that. Another one is making sure that the town has resiliency through storms and making sure that we have protected shorelines that are not vulnerable to the people and the municipal infrastructure, and being part of that, helping with maintenance and infrastructure upgrades is a great part for that.
Thank you. Question number 6. Do you have any specific proposals to generate lost revenue besides raising taxes? And we begin with you, Mr. Tavares.
Well, I think that before we get overly concerned about this, we need to see the final figures. I think we're going to be doing a lot better than we anticipated. We have managed to return a number of the jobs that where people were laid off. I think the FinCom has done a great job of looking at the budgets and seeing, where we can make changes. But for now, I think it's a matter of waiting. There are dollars that are coming in to the town. As a matter of fact, next week, we're going to accept $800,000 from the county from funds that are out there for the pandemic. So I think we're going to do a lot better than most people anticipate.
Thank you. Mr. Heath?
I think the town is going to need to prepare for another situation like we are currently in or getting out of. This could happen at any given point in anybody's life. We weren't expecting it. It never had happened in our lifetimes. And I think the current situation of money and bringing in and lost revenue, you just really got to cut back on any excessive spending, anything that just isn't absolutely necessary. Just cut it, put it on pause. And when things get better, wants can come, but needs need to happen first.
Thank you. Mr. Malaguti?
I agree that we need to actually have a better look at what the current and future needs and wants of the community are in looking at how we actually create a budget and actually maintain a budget through lost revenue due to any circumstance, whether it be pandemic, natural disaster, or any other economic outfall. What we need to keep doing is investing in creating more opportunities for commercial and industrial investment. But at the same time, we need to look at ways of creating efficiency within the operations of the town, whether it be through consolidation after we have better staffing to maintain that, and also the infrastructure of our buildings and through the way that we procure and purchase electricity and other avenues to better make our town more efficient and saving taxpayer dollar instead of creating new revenue.
Thank you. Mr. Helm?
Thanks. I agree with what everybody has said, and with Mr. Taveras' evaluation of upcoming and incoming monies to help us through this. I also agree with what everybody said, that hopefully we will take what has happened in the last year and a half as a lesson moving forward so that we don't get in this position again and, for lack of a better term, save or create policies that are effective on a rainy day. I'm in total agreement, as I've stated, on increasing commercial development to 30% of the tax base, and also creating a focus on tax efficiency. But I do have one idea that I believe we need to do immediately, and that is reinstate the Revenue Idea Task Force. Previously, they came up with some great ideas.
Thank you. Question number 7. What incentives can you provide to businesses to develop vacant commercial space? And we'll begin with you, Mr. Heath.
Commercial businesses, the incentive should be our large town, our large population. I don't think you should give businesses any kind of incentive that taxpayers are going to therefore resent the businesses for. So we need to just create as much business and as a community, be patrons to these businesses, or provide the employees. If you want large business to come in, large business would be great. I would like to see more large business in the area of like Colony Place and Industrial Park. A lot of those buildings are spread out. So I think condensing a little bit and allowing some more buildings to be popped up, hopefully that would bring in some more commercial tax base that Harry was bringing up.
Thank you. Mr. Malaguti.
For the town to entice businesses to come here. We have a great asset with the tourism and our local business economy that provides a plethora of events and activities for people to do, but to have a longer lasting approach and having more high quality paying jobs, we need to incentivize not the businesses to come here through tax increment financing, which has shown not to work, but we need to actually have better skilled labor and better skilled labor training for the actual entities to come here and set up shop and make Plymouth its destination home base. Doing so will require work, but it's the much needed factor that has been lacking in the future to entice larger businesses to come into the town.
Thank you. Mr. Helm?
First, in terms of bringing businesses incentivized, I agree with financial incentives really aren't the way to go. I do think that, as I mentioned in the strengths question, Plymouth presents an amazing lifestyle to people who want to move their businesses into town or grow their businesses here. Studies have shown that it is not necessarily the amount of commercially zoned space that you have, it's what you do with it. And I don't think that we've really done that correctly. We are top heavy with retail, which is not the preferred light industrial or office space that we need. As Mr. Malaguti pointed out, we need those not just for higher taxes, but also for better jobs for our residents.
Thank you. And Mr. Tavares?
I think that we are doing quite a bit right now, and some of this work has already been done. We need to attract the businesses here because they need to hear about Plymouth. They have to understand that we have a labor force that's willing and trained, that they can work and would love to stop commuting. Our infrastructure is in fairly good shape. We have an airport here. We're near major highways for transportation. So much of this is done, it's ready, but the word has to get out. And this past week, the Plymouth Economic Foundation it made arrangements to contract people that are now going to come in, analyze the town, and show us how we can be much more attractive and get people in to look at Plymouth first, and then say we can relocate here. I think that's going to happen much sooner than anticipated.
Thank you. Question number 8. Do you support a change in our form of government? And we begin with you, Mr. Malaguti.
Personally, myself, I do not support a change in the form of government. For our community, I believe that the form of government we have is good, not great, but we do need tweaking to the system and not just frivolous tweaking. We need to have actual in-depth looks at status of power and control and the actual abilities that each part of the government has to actually make decisions and make it in an informed and accountable manner. Though if the change did happen, I would fully support what the voters decided. I would not stand in the way of it, but I do not support at this time a change of the form of government.
Thank you. Mr. Helm?
Well, I'm been involved in the town meeting form of government for years, and I am a supporter of the town meeting form of government. But to say that changes are not necessary for the future of this town would be more than a bit myopic. I will be interested to see what, if number one, if the commission is impaneled, and number two, if they are, what they come up with. And like Mr. Malaguti, of course, I totally support the will of the voters of the town of Plymouth.
Thank you. Mr. Tavares?
I do not support a change at this time. I think one of my main concerns is that we should take the time to look at what the government is doing. If there can be some tweaking, as has been previously said, but to take the control of our town government and put it in the hands of probably 15 or less people, I don't think is the right way to go. Town meeting works, it's diverse, and I would much rather see a larger group making the decisions than a smaller one.
Thank you. And Mr. Heath?
I absolutely think that the government should change. I think that this town has outgrown the government that once worked for them. I believe that too many people that are volunteering probably have a little bit more time and money than the ones who can't afford the time to volunteer because they are busy working 2 jobs trying to support their households. And I just think that it's time for a change. And I think we're going to get there based on who I talk to throughout town. And I think that election day should, if the town is not happy as a whole, election day can change a face that can give them more hope than the revolving this election, that election. And it feels like no matter what, nothing changes. I think a new government will allow people to think that their vote can actually make a good change.
Thank you. And we are now going to move to your closing statements, and we will begin with you, Mr. Helm.
Plymouth is truly an amazing place to call home, but I know we need a change in our governmental attitude to better serve the residents of Plymouth. Our town government and town hall must become more accountable and more transparent. They must take greater leadership in controlling the relentless upward spiral of taxes. Residents, you know it, and you've all talked about it. It's time to stop waiting and finally do something about it. Shortly after moving permanently to Plymouth, I joined the Town Advisory and Finance Committee, where I currently serve as first vice chairman. I volunteered my time there to help make Plymouth a more successful community, but we are at an inflection point. That's why it's time for me to leave finance and join the select board, and I'm asking for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tavares. Mr. Tavares, you need to unmute.
I am so sorry. I am running because I believe in Plymouth and because I have the experience to continue guiding our town decisions in the right direction. There are those who govern by anger or by bullying. There are those who govern to win one issue. There are those who govern for attention. I am none of those things. I govern year after year because I want to contribute to making sure we approach what we do by being fair, civil, and balanced. If you elect me for another term, I pledge that I will continue leading with the same enthusiasm, fairness, and solid leadership that I have demonstrated in the past. Thank you. I respectfully request your vote on May 15th.
Thank you. Mr. Heath?
For the first time since I entered the workforce, I am not proud of where I'm at. I work for the town, and my entire career, I've always been proud of what I'm doing. I feel that I am part of a problem, not because of my actions, but because of mismanagement from the higher managers in town. And I did this as a last resort, and I hope that you can relate to me as just your average eyes. I have the eyes on the inside, just your average taxpayer, your average homeowner, and you can hope that my common sense will lead you in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Malaguti?
I would like to say that I am privileged to be a part of this community, and my family and myself have been a part of this community for generations and hopefully many more generations to come. But to ensure that and the many other families that want generational descendants to be here in the community, we need to have a better way that we form our decisions around the taxpayers first, and then have the discussion of how those are more equitably done through the municipal practice. I believe that the status quo needs to change. Status quo does not do anything, and the taxpayers have been complaining for years. I have been a part of that change for my tenure on town meeting, and I feel that the way to get this through is to have a change on the board for better for the taxpayers, and I hope for your support May 15th. Thank you.
On behalf of the Plymouth Area League of Women Voters, I want to thank the Select Board candidates for participating in tonight's forum. You are empowering voters with facts and information that will help them make important decisions as voters. Thank you for participating, and thank you for watching. On behalf of the Plymouth Area League of Women Voters, I welcome you to Candidates Night for Plymouth Planning Board. There are 4 candidates who are running. I am Attorney Alice Legue, and I shall be moderating this program. The questions for the candidates were submitted by our members. The Voter Services Committee then screened them and selected questions that reflected a variety of issues that are important to Plymouth. The order of the questions and the closing statements was determined by random selection prior to tonight. This enabled me to fill out a speaking grid that will facilitate the flow of questions and answers. All responses, including your closing statement, will be limited to 1 minute. We do have a few rules that candidates may not interrupt each other, no personal attacks are allowed, and no rebuttals during your answers are allowed. If necessary, you may use your closing statement for rebuttals. So let us now begin. We have 2 candidates, Birgitta Keene and David Peck, who are running for the 1 opening for a 5-year term. 2 candidates, Francis Mann and Lyndon McAuliffe, are running for the 1 opening for a 2-year term. Despite the differences in terms, all of the candidates will receive the same questions. And so now we shall begin with question number 1. What do you hope to accomplish as a planning board member? What qualifications make you an asset to that board? And we will begin with you, Ms. McAuliffe. Could you unmute, please, Linda?
Here we go. I think what's very important to the town is our affordable housing, our balance with conservation and economic development, and our ability to have a vision for the town so we can plan ahead, even if we have to change some zoning tools or regulations. It's important that we work with what we have and look towards the future. I had previously been chair of the school committee and sat on the board of the Economic Development Committee of the Chamber of Commerce. And I have 20 years plus experience with the town and town politics. And I hope to serve you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Peck?
Thank you. David Peck. I am a 28-year resident of the town of Plymouth. My career is as an architect and at Children's Hospital Boston as the director of facility planning. Equally important, besides my experiences in planning, is I've been a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals for 15 years, working with and interpreting our existing bylaws and plans. So between my career as a planner and as an experienced working with the zoning bylaws, I think I can bring to the planning board that experience, that insight to work to update our planning and zoning guidelines to move us into the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Keene?
Thank you, Moderator Legue. I'm currently the alternate on the planning board. For the past 2 years, I've had the opportunity to sit at all of the planning board meetings and understand how the planning board works, how people in the community interact with the planning board, how developers present their plans to the planning board, and how the planning board imposes conditions and how it votes on certain plans. What I bring to the table is my experience with multiple boards and committees that I'm currently involved in. But I think really most relevant is that I sit on the planning board. I hope to accomplish a master plan that's representative of the years ahead of us as opposed to the years behind us. Our master plan is now in its 20th year, and we're going to start. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mann?
Good evening. I bring a lot of experience, mostly in the community era, to this campaign. For over a dozen years, I was a reporter for the Old Colony Memorial, and I covered many different types of boards, including the planning board, the finance board, the board of selectmen. I'm also been very involved in the community. I was a Little League president long ago when my children were of Little League age. I was a hockey parent. I am a member of the board of the Task Force to End Homelessness, the Plymouth Task Force to End Homelessness. And I am also a board member of the Southeastern Massachusetts Pine Barren Alliance. What I hope to accomplish during my tenure on the board, if elected, is a bit of a change of direction. I think things have started to go too fast. I think we've been developing areas we should not be developing. I think some of the policies we have are in error, even if good, well-intentioned. I'd like to see a change of direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Question number 2. If you could change one thing in our zoning code, what would it be and why? And we'll start with you, Mr. Peck.
What I would like to add to our zoning law, if we can, is linkage or impact fees. In my experience in Boston, at Boston Children's Hospital, City of Boston has had linkage requirements for all developers since 1986 to contribute to affordable housing and a job creation. I would like to move this town toward create linkage requiring of every project, residential and commercial, over a certain square footage, that there are contributions to affordable housing and to climate mitigation, climate issues of mitigation. I think we can do it. It's legally allowed in this town, and I think we need it. Affordable housing in particular and climate are both incredibly important. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Keene?
What I would like to see happen in Plymouth are what I actually experienced while sitting on the planning board. We have inclusionary housing, which is the term that's used for affordable housing. But what we're seeing is that developers, instead of building inclusionary housing, which adds diversity to a community, they're placing dollars into a bank as opposed to building the houses. What that does is it actually contributes some dollars towards future affordable housing, but it actually doesn't build a house. So no one can live in the bank. Someone needs to live in the house. Inclusionary housing needs to include people, and we should require that our developers build the houses so that we can get to the 10% inclusionary housing.
Thank you. Mr. Mann?
I think I wouldn't necessarily change anything, as I would change the emphasis, where we place the emphasis as a town and as a planning board. I think in my research into the regulations, the zoning regulations, I was surprised to find so many that seek to protect our natural resources, that seek to protect our character, that seek to protect our community. And I don't think those have been emphasized properly. I think they are as important as any specific regulation regarding how a developer proceeds. They should first proceed by understanding what the community wants and what those kinds of regulations are, and then things can work out. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, question number 3. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. McAuliffe, I missed you. Back to question 2. What's the one thing in our zoning code that you might change and why?
In looking at the zoning maps, there's only 10% zoned land for commercial development. And only 20% of our tax base is commercial. So in balancing conservation and economic development or commercial development, I think it's important to also look at the zoning map so we can find specific places that don't impact our villages or our communities within our vast area to continue thoughtful commercial development. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now question number 3. What do you see as the role, purpose of a master plan? And does Plymouth's master plan need updating? And we'll begin with you, Ms. Keene.
I mentioned the master plan in my previous answer, but I can't stress enough the importance of the master plan. Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 41 requires that the planning board commission a master plan and that the master plan includes land use, natural resources, housing, economic development, historic and cultural resources. Our master plan was last commissioned. It began the process in 2002. That's why I emphasized that we can't go backwards, we need to go forwards. We are now going to begin to commission our new master plan. It will be about a 2-year process. It's going to include boards and community members. And it's important that everyone participate because it is the direction of the planning board for our future.
Thank you. Mr. Mann?
I agree with Birgitta that the master plan is possibly the primary role of the planning board because it's a visionary thing. It's something that we work towards as a community. I would differ slightly in saying that I love the previous master plan. I just don't believe that we stuck to it in any way. We never really followed it to the degree necessary. If you look at that master plan, it says a lot of the things we need to do now. It says to preserve certain areas, the Pine Hill, not the Pine Hills development, the Pine Hill, Chiltonville, our wonderful ecoregion, the Pine Barrens. And it also emphasizes many other things that we need to attain, including a restriction on the amount of development that takes place. That 2004, I believe, or earlier master plan suggested that we reach a point where we do not allow infrastructure to go further. I think that was a brilliant concept.
Thank you. Ms. McAuliffe? You need to unmute, please, Linda.
I originally was a part of the master plan beginning in 2002. It was so extensive. Everyone participated, as Brigitte had said. We need all of the stakeholders, people of the board, citizens. What I really liked about it was the different village concepts and mixed-use development where, like in the older days, growing up in North Plymouth, they had apartments up top and commercial bakeries or drugstores underneath. I think we certainly can update, times have changed, but I like the process of how it was done previously as well.
Thank you. And Mr. Peck?
I agree with my colleagues that it is time, if not well past the right time to update our master plan. There are some major initiatives that absolutely have to be looked at. In particular, the Entergy Holtec property. Since the last one, that has become the elephant in the room in terms of dealing with the long-range land use planning for that property. In particular, I personally hope that will be primarily conservation land someday, but also a selective portion of it for industrial commercial to add to our commercial base. But that's an example of how things have changed in the last 15 or 20 years, that we need to take a fresh look at updating our master plan to include things that have changed in those last 15 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Question number 4. Residential development in Plymouth is booming. What are you most concerned about in terms of planning for the future development in Plymouth? And we'll begin with you, Mr. Mand.
Oh, there's many things to be concerned about, of the rate of development, the size of the developments. I'm very concerned that we're trying to reach our 40B 10% goals essentially on the back of the community, using too many resources. The last two, I believe, I think it was the Oasis and the Walk, which is now underway. Both of them, I believe, over 300 units. Now they give 25% to affordable housing, but that is a long way toward getting to the goal that we have. I'd rather see a well-designed 100% affordable development of maybe 25 units, and wouldn't have the same negative impact that some of these other developments have or potentially have. I guess that's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. McAuliffe?
Hi. Residential development is booming, and it's the planning board's job to control the land use and the developments. The village open space concept is important. Again, density, not sprawl. I mean, we've used smart growth. I think fire safety is huge, especially in South Plymouth, where even my street does not have a fire hydrant, and a lot of the developments off of Bond Road don't have any fire safety. I think our developers are trying to work with us, and I think we're trying to work with them to find some solutions that can help us all. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Peck?
I would like to better manage residential development, not preclude it, but carefully manage it, with particular attention to requiring everything from a single home and on up to mandate inclusion of climate mitigation efforts. I'd like to see encouragement of solar. I'd like to see water saving devices mandated. I'd like to see the requirement that everything from a house and on up plant trees, incorporate native species here, and the preservation of open space. Clearly, this can be done through density, as some of my colleagues have mentioned, but clearly we need to preserve our environment and our open space, and yet welcome residential development carefully managed. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Keene?
When I look at a plan and a developer is presenting to the planning board, I listen to how wide the driveways need to be and all of the small details. But this is what I'm thinking. What I'm thinking is we're creating a neighborhood. And when we create a neighborhood, we're creating quality of life for groups of people. If it's inclusionary housing, should just blend in with a neighborhood. We're creating a place where children can play. And when I get a chance to speak on the planning board, I ask those questions. Where are the children going to play? How are you going to draw a hopscotch on asphalt? Shouldn't we be putting in concrete? Those little details is what brings people into our community to enjoy their quality of life and contribute to Plymouth, the town we love.
Thank you. Question number 5. Do you agree with the current planning board's decision to modify a covenant protecting open space? And how do you feel that this will affect future development? And we'll begin with you, Ms. McAuliffe. I need you to unmute. You're still muted.
Sorry, thank you. I think each covenant decision is seen individually or heard individually by the planning board. I think due to the current circumstances of a pending lawsuit against the planning board, and obviously my husband's on the planning board, I really can't speak to that. But I do agree that each case should be heard individually and then decided as a board. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Peck?
I would not have supported breaking the covenant in this particular Bump Rock Road thing. As I've said in my Old Colony comments and elsewhere, I consider a covenant and almost like local zoning, that when it was put together, the neighbors created kind of local zoning to preserve that open space and preserve the land uses. You do not break or change zoning requirements easily or with just 3 people voting. Any zoning change in this town has to go through multiple hearings, and town meeting has to vote at over 2/3 to change any zoning. Covenants should not be lightly changed at all. And I would have voted against this covenant change. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Keene?
I want to thank Mr. Peck for what he said as an answer to this question. I was there, of course, on the planning board, but as alternate, I did not get to vote. I did speak against breaking the covenant and ask the board members to please consider to take some time to listen more carefully to those that were there for the public hearing. The public hearing was prematurely cut off. Many in the public were not heard. So the process that was followed that evening was very difficult for the people that were trying to get heard about this covenant. I really have to emphasize that there are 80 covenants that are at risk for this sort of treatment, and developers have already come to the planning department asking if they can use the same mechanism to break covenants. It's not fair. It's not right.
Thank you. Mr. Mand?
I'm not sure that I should comment on how I might have voted, given the possibility that I could be on the planning board and this issue could come back before the board. But I would say, that, as Birgitta said and others, that I felt the process was really tainted. I felt that there were criticisms of public participation of the community given by board members that I thought were way out of bounds. If anything that we can do as any board will improve the relationships between the community and government, it's giving people the opportunity to comment on things they're passionate about. And I don't believe that happened in the right way. I would be, as I am an environmentalist, disinclined to approve anything that breaks covenants protecting open space. And as Birgitta also said, I think there's close to 7,000 acres that are now at jeopardy. So I'd be disinclined to approve that, but I can't say officially how I would vote, concerned that it could come before the board again. Thank you.
Thank you. Question number 6. How could the planning board work together with the Affordable Housing Trust and CPC to create a master plan for affordable housing going forward? And we'll begin with you, Mr. Peck.
Well, as I said in an earlier comment, I absolutely believe in some concept of, one could call it linkage or an impact fees, which specifically are not allowed in this state. But I also would like to incorporate other opportunities, including creating the bylaws allowing accessory dwelling units, which I tried once to incorporate through town meeting, but to create multiple opportunities for different kinds of affordable housing, not just the trust, but just choices for especially young families and Plymouth employees, teachers and police. So I think there are just multiple strategies that are potentially available to be pursued to create affordable housing options in this town. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Keene?
I would say that actually the planning board is working with all of these entities and will begin working much more closely because they're required to work with the Affordable Housing Trust and the CPC for the new master plan. It's part of how the plan is put together and part of the requirement of the state for the plan. But what I'd like to say is, and as Mr. Peck had mentioned, there's really other ways that we can bring affordable housing into Plymouth. One is that we can work on the HUD definition of who actually is eligible for affordable housing, because we're rolled into the Boston economic, well, we have to use Boston rates, which makes it very difficult. And then we can use adaptive reuse, which means that we can take some property and reuse it to make it affordable. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mand?
I think that there is a big need, a very large need for affordable housing, but I'd like to bring another player into the mix. The CPC does a lot. They put a lot of money on the line for affordable housing, and the Affordable Housing Trust is working diligently in that direction as well. But I'm a board member of the Plymouth Task Force to End Homelessness, and we see where affordable housing really hits the rubber hits the road. It's always, I believe, a matter of cost. As Brigitte was saying, we're offering so-called affordable housing that not many people that you would consider in need can afford. But at the level of the Task Force to End Homelessness, there is a basic need to give people housing, either that they're homeless or they're near homeless, many different phases of homelessness. And I think if we work with them, they have benefits when you work with them to be able to get certain housing done in a pretty rapid rate. I think it would benefit everyone to look at that. Thank you.
Ms. McAuliffe?
Hi, I agree with Brigitte that the planning board is working to increase the affordable housing with the trust and the community development, community preservation committee. The Meg-Rico development on Carver Road is in the West Center Village, and I heard Brigitte ask for more things like open space and playing area, which was important. The developer also worked with the trust and the CPC. All of those are rental units, and it's a crisis. Our teachers, our firefighters, our police, we want to keep them all here, and our children and our elders as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Question number 7. What infrastructure improvements do you support for Plymouth? And we'll begin with you, Ms. Keene.
Wow, there's a long list of infrastructure improvements. Obviously, as we continue to grow, our roads have to keep up with our growth so that we can actually get to where we need to go and reduce congestion on the roads, which only frustrates people. But really what we need to focus on is our water. We think that we sit on this wonderful, beautiful aquifer, and we do. But it doesn't necessarily give to every area of Plymouth equal access to water. The demands on the aquifer are huge. And when we're in stressful situations with high heat, there are times when water is not available. Roads and water and clean air that our trees bring to us, our trees are responsible for our clean air. That's the infrastructure that I believe that Plymouth needs.
Thank you. Mr. Mand?
I would echo the call for what is called green infrastructure. More and more with climate change and other factors, sea level rise, we are being affected by changes in our climate that can best be served and most cost effectively be served by retaining or protecting or restoring some of our natural resources. We've seen this happen, and this town's been a trendsetter, and we've seen it happen at Tidmarsh, and we've seen it happen along the Eel River, and many other groups are working on projects that will restore the riverways, add more resiliency by protecting trees. We've got to stop clear cutting trees in the name of energy efficiency or alternative energy. That does no one any good, affects heat in a bad way, and generally leads to the wrong idea of what a balance is that we need. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. McAuliffe?
Hi, thank you. There are many needs in our infrastructure. We are a very area-wise large town. The roads, as previously been said, need improvements. Some areas more than others. Our traffic has increased. The truck traffic, which David had talked about, impact fees. I think that's important that certain people be responsible for damages that they're doing. I agree with our water, and I would also like to add that energy, our energy, renewable energy to save money, I think is something that we also can work harder on. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Peck?
Well, Birgitta and Frank had sort of stolen my number one, which was preservation of water and staying ahead of the demand on water and managing that. But two other things I'd mention besides roads and other things is the town should put a full court press on the MBTA to increase train service to the town of Plymouth to get us out of our cars, to be able to get into town. And the second full court press should be more electric vehicle charging stations. The town has several. We need a lot more. And again, looking into the future, I think the future is electric vehicles over the next 5 or 10 years, and we should be ahead of that and not behind it. So those are two aspects of a large selection of infrastructure improvements we should focus on. Thank you.
Thank you. Question number 8. Are all new buildings in Plymouth subject to green building codes like LEED, Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design? If not, explain why. And that begins with you, Mr. Mand.
I can't say for certain, but I don't believe LED buildings are a requirement. I mean, one of the things that the town has been asked to do is sign on to the stretch code and other state energy codes. And we were very tardy in that, moving very slowly in that direction. So I think that perhaps we should require these things. I know we should have the stretch code fully implemented, in my opinion. But I don't believe we're doing so. We depend upon organizations, enlightened organizations, to do so. And I think most likely we need to put those things into the regulations and the requirements as a matter of fact, that we should all be giving our fair share to climate resiliency going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. McAuliffe?
I do not believe that all of the buildings in Plymouth are subject to the building green codes like LEED. I know our high schools are LEED certified. Reusing rainwater as much as they could. Everything went through the building committee, Mr. Peck, and they did a good job with the LEED certification. I'm not sure about our new town hall. I think we need to be more stringent with the builders when they build a residential development. Energy is important, our green space is important, and we need to be accountable as a board in a town. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Peck?
Well, thank you, Linda, for mentioning the town buildings. The Town Building Committee, of which I've been chairman since 2005, has insisted on our public buildings be LEED certified to at least a silver level. So both high schools and town hall have a LEED certification. Like Linda, I will say I'm not sure LEED applies to residential development. It certainly can, but I think, as Frank said, the stretch code recently approved by town meeting absolutely will. So I think between at the community level pushing for LEED wherever possible, which is voluntary, and the stretch code will go a long way toward making all new buildings environmentally responsive. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Keen?
Well, I want to thank the other panelists for bringing up the stretch code and describing where LEED is actually being used in the town. But let me focus on residential. Right now, there is no certification. There is one young female builder who has built a green building recently, a rental, and I'm quite proud of her. But wouldn't this be a wonderful idea for us to bring this to town meeting, to change some of our rules and regulations for subdivisions, that we would have more green concepts, LEED to a certain extent, and really ingrain that in all of our residential building at this point, particularly for our subdivisions. We're trying to put our toes in the water on the planning board. We're taking a look at less impervious surfaces, solar ready roofs on houses in newer subdivisions. We're getting ready. We're not there yet.
Thank you. And our last question this evening: what specific regulations would you propose for the use and placement of wind and solar structures? And we'll begin with you, Ms. McAuliffe.
Those are very interesting topics, because I had talked about energy and energy efficiency, and renewable energy should be a goal of the planning board. At a previous town meeting voted, pretty much voted down solar farms, which is large scale solar development. I think that was important in the clear cutting of trees. Wind turbines shouldn't be in residential areas, because the ones on Bourne Road are very disturbing to the neighbors. It's something that, again, the zoning would have to look at where they would best be placed. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Peck?
I guess my answer would be the regulations are already in place. They just need to be firmly enforced. So in our zoning bylaws, we have a whole separate section for wind turbines, which it creates a high bar in terms of height, distance from residential facilities, sound criteria, and so on. And I think recently we haven't had any wind recently because it's our strict criterias are hard to meet. Likewise, as Linda just mentioned, there are new bylaws about how much clear cutting, separation from property lines and things for solar structure. I certainly would welcome solar structure and in fact wind for renewable energy, but we have regulations that we just need to firmly and fairly enforce. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Keen?
I want to say that I had an opportunity when I was chair of the Board of Health to really study wind turbines and the effects of wind turbines on communities such as Plymouth because of the hundreds and hundreds of complaints that came before the board because of the wind turbines that are here along Bourne Road. Wind turbines do not belong in Plymouth for one reason only. They don't get enough wind in order to actually justify their use. They belong in places like the Dakotas, where they have wind coming around along thousands of miles that actually push those turbines. They belong in places that have continuous strong winds. It's not Plymouth. Solar belongs on roofs, in car parks, over cars. Do not clear cut trees for solar farms. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Mand?
I would say we should regulate that before we take, even though we have good solar regulations compared to many communities, before we take another tree down for any solar array, that every parking lot in some of our strip malls and every closed landfill, and we have a few of those as well, needs to be covered with solar panels. I don't understand the excuse. It's always that the wires are not close enough to those sites, but that's something that should be done first and before any of the others are even considered. As far as wind energy, there are so many problems associated with it. It's very difficult to site. Now, we should attempt to do so. We should attempt to find sites that affect no residential property owners, don't cause any of the kind of complaints we have, but that's very difficult even in an area as large as Plymouth. But again, let's put regulations that require solar energy on those parking lots and on those landfills. And then there'd be less pressure overall on the green spaces.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now we will have your closing statements, and we will begin with you, Mr. Peck.
Thank you. I'm interested in working on the planning board where I can bring my experience as an architect and a planner to help the town move forward with planning. 35 years at Children's Hospital as their director of planning, registered architect since 1975. I worked in Plymouth on the west-south Federal Furnace and Indian Brook schools long ago. I've been on the Zoning Board of Appeals for 15 years, chairman of the building committee here in town, also for 15 years. I know the town. I want to bring my particular skills to help the town as they move into the future. Again, 28 years. My oldest son was born here. My youngest son graduated from Plymouth North, and 28 years in Plymouth with different experience allows me to bring that attitude to the town. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Keen?
I've been listening to residents, and all over town, I'm hearing that we just can't continue on the same path, that development is out of balance with the needs of residents and small businesses. Plymouth's development starts and finishes with the planning board. I'm hearing concern about recent decisions that the planning board has made, that we're crowding out Plymouth's beauty and character, that it's impossible for many of our kids to even think about staying in their hometown. There's room for growth, important commercial growth that comes with jobs and services that provide an income for young families, and housing that embraces each generation. New growth needs to adhere to the latest principles that conserve our resources. Fixing the past is difficult. Changing the future is possible, but only with the right planning board. Our beautiful, historic, one-of-a-kind Plymouth. Vote for yourself, your children, and the generations that follow.
Thank you. And Ms. McAuliffe. I'm
Thank you.
sorry, Mr. Mann. I'm sorry first. I'm
That's
sorry.
okay.
Mr. Mann.
Hello, my name is Francis Frank Mand, and I'm a candidate for the Planning Board. The Planning Board is a place where I believe I can continue to make a contribution to my community. My community is in many ways under stress. Large-scale developments are increasing. We're seeing the limits of our natural resources. But when I examine up close the regulations under which the board operates, I believe I see how this board can make a difference. Of course, a lot depends on how those regulations are interpreted and who is doing the interpreting. The regulation should never be an excuse for saying my hands are tied. Most towns have a web page where they describe the role of the planning board. Some speak of only knowing the laws, the regulations, the fine print, but others use the same phrase over and over. The planning board's role, they say, is to guide the development of the town in the best interests of all residents. I don't think that's been happening. That's why I'm asking for your vote.
Thank you. Mr. McAuliffe, or Miss McAuliffe, I'm sorry. It's been a long night, sorry.
Thank you. In closing, the decision to run for this position was mine and mine alone. I'm an independent-minded, hardworking woman who has over 20 years of community service here in Plymouth. Town meeting, school committee, bylaw review committee, Cedarville Steering Committee. And also, I'm very proud that working with the board of directors at the Plymouth Chamber of Commerce, it was my initiation to start a public-private partnership that resulted in the Plymouth Education Foundation. I will bring my proven leadership to tackle the critical issues that we face as a community. Public-private partnerships need to continue for our affordable housing industry. And I believe I'm the candidate to achieve the goal. Home is where the heart is. My heart will always be with America's hometown.
Thank you, Ms. McAuliffe.
You're welcome.
On behalf of the Plymouth Area League of Women Voters, I want to thank the planning board candidates for participating in this forum. You are empowering voters with facts and information that will help them make important decisions as voters. And thank you for people who are watching, and good night.
Good night, and thank you, Alice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
You're welcome.